Christa is absolutely amazing. Today, she's going to talk to you about having a full-time job, but then also putting into place that online venture, that community or the content creation you want to put out into the world. Basically, if you want to reach people outside of your 9 to 5, whether it is to build a business or to just, like I said, build a community, then today's episode is for you. Krista is going to talk to us about what motivated her to start a podcast and a community, how she helps people to have that additional income while they have their position. What are some myths and some barriers that stop you and me from trying these new ventures on the side? We're going to talk about support and resources and the mindset that you need in order to succeed in this new space. And we're also going to share her one thing that can be heard around the world. And I'm not going to lie to you, we just recorded this and I'm literally recording this intro after that. And it gave me chills. It gave me goosebumps. So you not only want to listen, but you also want to stay all the way to the end because this is a good episode. Let's go ahead and tune in starting now. Krista, it is so good to be here with you and just kind of share this conversation with everyone. And let's just get started really quickly by telling us a little bit about yourself.
I'm so glad to be here, and I've loved getting to know you and feel like we've just become fast friends because we have so many opinions and ideas in common. So thanks for having me on. I am a project manager in the engineering and construction industry. I'm married. I have grown adult children and 2 grandchildren that are all close by. So that's great. I get to spend a lot of time with them. I've been working for over 3 decades, and I love, love, love what I do at my job, but I also love what I do on the side, which is I help Christian women communicators and leaders put structure and strategy around their big ideas so they can do what God has called them to do, whether that's a business, a ministry, a product, a service, whatever it is. I love working with women, particularly women who are also working full-time or otherwise engaged during the day, so that they can do the thing that God's really put on their heart as a passion.
Okay, that is really cool. There's there's so many things that we want to do and that we don't actually get to do, right? Whether it's because of, logistical reasons, financial reasons, heart reasons, mental barrier reasons, insecurities, all these things. But before we get really into that, what drove you to initially start? Because, we all have these, we have these careers and we think we're going to retire in these careers. And for a very long time, it was just the 9 to 5. But what spurred in you to start something new?
I had been doing all the normal mom things, helping out at church, in youth group, following my kids around in their activities. And as they left home, I started praying and just, Lord, what do you want me to do with myself in this new season? What do you have for me as I'm approaching my empty nest? And it was really funny because God led me to Proverbs 31 Ministries online Bible studies. And it's just funny because I had spent all these years in a male dominated field, and I'm very uncomfortable still today, very uncomfortable around large groups of women. And so if you had told me 10 years ago that I was going to be this involved in women's ministry and working with women like this, I would have told you were crazy because that just wasn't my thing. But God has different ideas than we do. And so I started volunteering there in the online Bible study area, and that's where I realized that the project management skills that God had given me in my career could be used to help women in ministry, women who have wild, crazy, audacious ideas, but need some help putting those ideas in a order that can be actually executed. It broke my heart to hear women say, we'd love to do this, but we don't know how, so we can't do it. Or we can't figure this out, so we can't do it. So I just became the figure outerer, and I figured out how to do all kinds of things we wanted to do. And then God just opened doors for me to do that outside of the volunteer world into a business of my own that I've been doing for almost 8 years now, just helping women claim what God has called them to do and helping them figure out how to actually do it.
Wow. So that's really powerful to, oftentimes when we think of a side venture or what people call a side hustle or
Mhm.
whatever, something part time, there's this intention behind it. And that intention tends to be, I'm going to build this business in order for me to quit my job. And, but it sounds like with you, it was something different, something bigger, something that had a calling behind it.
Yeah, I thought at the beginning, it definitely had a calling to it because I had such compassion for these women who I literally saw in tears close their computer and say, I can't do this. And I
Mm.
had such compassion for them and wanted to help them. So it was born out of that desire to help. I also at the time thought that it might allow me at some point to quit my job. But as I've looked at the industry and what I do, I feel like God is using my career, my job. Part of what he's using it for is to fund me being able to do this ministry at prices that these women can afford. And so I'm not actively trying to grow the business so that I can quit work, but I am hoping to use it as sort of a transition into retirement and continue to serve the women during that season as well.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Having that motivation and that driving factor makes all the difference in the world in terms of like how you show up for these women and how it's really like a heart a heart motivator and not so much a financial or business or self when it says in the Bible selfish ambition, like it's
Right.
not that kind of a motivator. So we could go in so many directions here, but I know that most everyone listening right now has a W-2 9 to 5 position and is just considering options, right? Do I get change of industry? Do I move up in my career? Like, what is my next move? And so, right now, I think we're at a time, especially after the pandemic, where your income can come from many different places. And in fact, it doesn't have to come from just one place. And so, one of the things that you and I really connected on was this idea that career doesn't only mean a W-2 position anymore, and that it doesn't only mean one stream of income. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, a lot of the teaching that you hear in this space around having a side venture is, like you said, hurry, hurry, work hard, grind, grind, build it fast. It's super easy to do. They all tell you that it's so easy to do. In 6 months you can have a six-figure income and you can quit your job, and that's what the goal is. But for a lot of the people that I work with and that I see, we like our jobs. I like my job. I don't like getting up and going to my job, but I actually love what I do when I'm there, which has always been such a great blessing to me. But at the same time, I also love the thing that God has called me to do on the side. And so those two things can coexist. It takes some planning and strategy and some things that you learn how to do along the way, but it doesn't have to be either or. It doesn't have to be like you're always striving to be able to quit that job. That doesn't have to be your goal. It's okay to say, this side thing that I'm doing, it's a passion project. It's a ministry. It's a thing that gives us maybe a little extra income in our family. It's an opportunity to train my children in some skills if they come along with me in this. There's lots of reasons to have a side venture or to have a side business of your own in addition to your career, as long as you have the right strategies in place to manage both of them.
Yeah, that's really big is to do it in a way, and this is where systems comes in, which is a whole
Mm-hmm.
other conversation, maybe another episode even, but but doing it in a way that it should not take away from the job that you are committed to,
Right.
because you want to do everything in integrity.
Yeah, I always say you want to make sure that you are building your goals into your life and not building your life around those goals,
Oh,
right? So,
that's
in the
good.
same thing with this side venture, you want to build that into your life and not build your life around it.
Absolutely. I love that.
Mhm.
Build your goals into your life, not build your life into your goals. I love
Right.
that. So here's the thing, with so many people having these 9 to 5 positions and considering their next move, what are some, you know, um, ideas, myths, barriers that you've seen women come across, that you've worked with in terms of like making decisions for their career while also considering whether or not they should start something on the side?
I think you do have to start with, if you're not quitting your job in the short term,
Mm-hmm.
building in respect for your employer is a really important thing. You have to find those boundaries that allow you to do your side venture while you are still giving your best to your career and honoring your employer for the opportunity that they're giving you for income, for advancement, for learning, for satisfaction, all those things. And you have to decide what those boundaries are. You and I talked about one of mine just before we came on recording. One of my boundaries is that I don't talk about or connect with people related to my side venture on LinkedIn. I keep that strictly professional because I don't want that bleeding over into my career space out of respect for my employer. In my job, it's not really, it wouldn't really be great to be seen as, oh, she's not really fully committed to this job, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so that's one of the boundaries that I draw. So I think as you're beginning to make that decision and move in there, unless your intention and you have a clear path to quitting your job within a very short time, one of your top priorities, and once you've taken care of your family and all those things, is to honor your employer while you're working on the side thing, and not steal time from them. Not, I mean, I won't even use my company's internet to go on and check my email for my business or anything, even their Wi-Fi, not even just using their computer, but using my phone on their Wi-Fi. I won't even do that because I feel like that's where my barrier is. I don't want them to ever be able to accuse me of using company resources to build my business. Now, in some situations, I have one friend whose employer encourages them to have side adventures and actually told her she could schedule coaching calls on her lunch hour in a conference room. So the boundaries will be different for everybody depending on your situation, but figuring out, what does honoring my employer look like? I think that's a very important first step so that you keep your priorities in order as you're working on your new thing.
Okay, it's so interesting that you mentioned that because just a few days ago, I was talking to a woman who she has this amazing business that she's cultivating. I'm really excited for her. I'm not going to mention any names, but she has this amazing business that she's cultivating. And she also just was offered a position that doesn't begin for a certain period of time. And she came across this sort of thought of, hey, what do I do? Similar to what you were mentioning, do I grow this audience on LinkedIn when I also have this other professional job? And we had this conversation around, being transparent with the employer to ensure that especially because, these are the business and the employment are in similar, not the same,
Hmm.
but similar or adjacent industries. And so then it's like having this transparent conversation with the employer, maybe even drawing out some parameters. And figuring out the right time to share this conversation, because there are, if you don't have the secure offer in writing, you've started, right? Because everything's at will, there's much less incentive for the employer to sit down at the table and have this conversation. So it's kind of
Right.
like, watching out for yourself while at the same time being transparent and finding something that's going to be a win-win for both parties.
Yeah. Yeah. In my situation, I haven't been, not that I'm hiding, but I haven't been like, I don't talk about it at work. I am not transparent. I'm sure some of them, everybody Googles everybody, right? I'm sure they've Googled me and know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But I really try, for me, I need to keep a barrier, but for other people, it may be adjacent and it may work to make it very transparent. So
Mhm.
again, navigating through what that looks like for you in your own situation and setting those boundaries and those guidelines right up front, I think is an important part that keeps you from letting one side overtake what God wants you to do with the other.
Absolutely. And I think you brought up a really good point, um, that bears kind of repeating is that if there is any potential for a conflict of interest between your
Mm,
work and the venture that you have on the side, it is important to have that conversation and be transparent, for integrity reasons and conflict of interest and parameters and all that, but also for legal liabilities as far as
right.
your contract that you've signed. But when
Right.
they're not adjacent, where they're completely separate from each other, you do have a little bit more leeway, more of a choice on what you want to do with your time, right?
Yeah.
Outside of completing the job. So I think that was a really great point. So we talked about, kind of what got you into working with women in this capacity. As you've been working with folks who are in a full-time job, but also are running a side venture or starting a side venture, have you noticed any kind of myths about online business or any kind of mental barriers that stop women from actually moving forward in these new ventures?
I think what I see more of is underestimating what it's going to take to do the new venture. I mean, the biggest barrier, I think, is, especially for women, is that we think everything has to be perfect and we have to know everything. We have to have it all figured out. We have to know exactly what's going to happen before we start. So that's probably the biggest barrier, to getting involved. But I think the biggest mistake that people make is thinking that, oh, I can do this for, because you hear it all the time, right? Build an empire during nap time, right? I can do this with, 30 minutes at a time here and there. And in reality, that's really difficult to do. I'm sure there are some specific places where you can, but especially in the area that I work mostly with women who are creatives, who are writers or speakers or podcasters. And those kind of things take some focused brain time. And so I tell them often, yes, you can use those 30 minutes at a time, 20 minutes at a time. You need to have a plan for how you're going to use that time. But at the same time, you have to be able to carve out a couple of 2 hour, 3 hour chunks, a couple of times a month at least, to do that focused brain work that you're going to have to do, because you can't do all of that in 30 minutes at a time. So I think that's the one thing that people think, oh, I'm sitting in carpool for 30 minutes every day. I could be building a business. Well, yeah, you can do some building business activities while you're sitting in carpool, or while you are commuting on the train home from work. You can do some business building activities during that time, but you also need some good chunks of focus time. And if you don't have that, then it may not be the season for you to start, or it may be, you may need to adjust what you're going to start so that it can fit into the smaller chunks.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I when I was starting the business, I thought, oh, I'm doing this full time now.
Mm,
It's going to be so fast.
right.
And the reality is that I have grown to appreciate that every time someone's podcast comes out, every time I see one post on social media, I know the amount of work that has gone in there. And before, I would spend a second, maybe two, and decide if I'm going to click that heart button or if I'm going to click
Mm,
that like. And that is all I thought about that post. I thought, that's cool, click. But I didn't realize that sometimes that is literally hours of
yeah.
work to go
Yeah.
from idea to creating the content to producing the long form content to pulling that one magical quote,
Right.
putting that on a Canva image, and then
Yeah.
drawing the caption. I mean, this takes a lot of time. And so I definitely agree with you. Have you noticed anything else that stops folks from starting something when they know they're supposed to or they know they should?
Sometimes it's around resources. They don't have, especially if it's some of the online things. They're not techie. They haven't, especially a lot of the women that I work with are heading towards empty nester type women, so they're not up to all the Instagram things, and they're not quite sure how to do all of that. So sometimes those barriers of, the kind of the imposter syndrome of, who do I think I am to go and put something on Instagram where all these young girls are looking so cute and perfect and, all that whole thing. But I just think it's really cool how Instagram has changed over the last 5 years or so, to where it's not yes, there is still a place for that beautifully curated feed, and it is still very much a visual platform, but it's also become much more down to earth for certain niches and for certain groups of people. And so it's not, that should not be a barrier. The fact that you don't have, a neutral minimalist farmhouse background to do your pictures in, that should not be a barrier. But I do see women, that imposter syndrome. I'm not good enough. I can't figure it out. I don't know how. That is a big barrier that I definitely see. And those are all barriers that are easy to overcome if you will allow yourself enough time to overcome them. The other barrier that I see is people still think, oh, I can do a website, I can put up a website and I can put up 2 blog posts and Google is going to send 100,000 people to my website and I'm going to make tons of money off of clicks on my website. Well, that doesn't happen really anymore either. So, you can learn to overcome all those technical trials and all of those processes and things like that if you are willing to give yourself enough time and put in the work to do it. There's tutorials, there's free things, there's courses, coaches, everything is available to help you learn, but you can't expect it to be an overnight magical thing.
Yeah, that mindset. So I come from a background of being a faculty member, and we had a very set schedule, and I loved my work, right? But one of the things that I had to really shift away from is this concept of I know exactly what I'm doing, I know exactly how to do it well, and I know that there's nothing that's going to come at me that I won't be able to handle. Well, when starting a new business, especially if you're not typically or historically, entrepreneurial, it wasn't just about the logistics of starting a new business. It was a constant, and it still is a constant mindset breakthrough every day type of a season for me right now to figure out, okay, I need to figure out for myself where no one is evaluating me or giving me any direction, what actions I need to take today that are going to make the biggest impact. I need to have the ability to fail fast and fail forward. And I need to grow really thick skin.
Yeah, that last one is, I'm glad you went there to that really thick skin, because you have to be, you can't just wait until that it's going to be successful, because a lot of times you're not really sure what to do. And women will sit back and just wait and just until I know for sure this is it. But, I end my podcast every week with the same thing. Clarity comes from action. And action is just one simple thing. So taking one simple step every day towards learning, towards growing, towards figuring it out, that's where you're going to get clarity. You're not going to get clarity by just sitting back and thinking about it and taking 1 million courses and scrolling through 1 million Instagram feeds. You're going to get clarity when you take action. And so, but it doesn't have to be big, huge action. It can be small steps at a time and figuring it out.
Just one activity, focus on, like you said, one simple thing at a time. Because when we start, we want to do all the glittery things. I want to do a podcast and a YouTube channel and this and that. And it becomes so overwhelming so quickly. You think, oh, I just record and upload. No.
No.
No,
figure out one thing, do it really well so that you're efficient at doing it. Yeah. And then add on something else. If you have capacity to add on something else, you may find that the one thing you're doing is pretty much in the certain season, it's all you have capacity to do. And if that's all you have capacity to do, and that whole capacity discussion is another whole podcast episode. Yes. But if you don't have the capacity to do it, then you don't do it. And you just grow at the rate that God brings to you as you fill your capacity with the things you can do.
And that's okay.
And it's totally okay. Yep.
So as we're going through this process, there's, let's say someone is in a 9-to-5 or a W-2 salary position right now, and they're thinking, well, I might want to start something. This sounds doable. This sounds like it's possible. What are some resources that you think are needed for someone to be successful in this space? We talked about mindset, but what are the more tangible resources?
Well, if you're looking in online business, I think first, as far as not necessarily a resource, and it is a little bit more a mindset, is, people want to start with all that branding things and naming and buying domain names and things like that. But if you're not really clear on some of the foundational things, you can get way off track before you've even started. So I always encourage people, the first questions that you need to ask yourself when you think, okay, I think this is doable and I think I have an idea, is really hone in on why am I doing this? What is the outcome that I want? Who am I serving? What problem do they have that I'm solving? What's my unique way of solving it, and what's the transformation I want them to make. Mm-hmm. And so if it's, if your idea is these really cool bracelets that you can make, you can answer all those questions about bracelets, but you need to understand those foundational things and then build your branding and your product line or your services or whatever it is around those foundational questions. So I always encourage people to start with that foundation. Then beyond that, you need to decide where your main place you're going to show up is. And that, again, depends on what kind of business you're having. But you need to find out where your people are, how they're behaving, and how you can serve them where they are, instead of spending so much time. Eventually, you want them to come where you are. Obviously, you want to attract them to you, but you have to start by going where they are. So, having those, deciding whether you're going to be promoting on Instagram, whether you need a blog, whether you need a podcast. There are great courses that will teach you how to build businesses in all those places, but you need to find out where that person you're wanting to serve, where are they? How do they consume? If you're giving information, how do they consume information? Are they podcast listeners? Are they blog readers? Are they just scrolling on Instagram? Wherever they are, that's where you need to start building your platform and then branch out from there.
And that's really good that you mentioned before you invest in your branding and, all the cool gadgets and digital things to make your branding pop, right? I think in the beginning, I've started, 2, 3, 4 different ventures, right? And they've fallen flat because I didn't know what I was doing. I was just kind of figuring things out. I was throwing spaghetti at the wall. And, you're right. I spent so much, well, not a ton of money, but I spent money on things like fonts.
Right.
Like logos. And
I have a whole folder on my laptop of fonts, just different fonts that I thought were cool. Like I collected them like they were pennies. I don't know what, but I have a ton of them.
Yeah.
and I use 3.
Right. The same 3. Right. And that's the thing is like, I had all these ventures and I hear this all the time. There are every once in a while, someone who just has an idea and is very clear headed. I'll be honest with you. You're more of like an engineering mind.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I am the complete opposite. Like I absolutely love my engineers. I love working with engineers. I love the whole systematic, logical, structured thinking, but I'm more like a bucket of Legos that you threw on the floor.
Right.
And many of us are like that, right? And so before I figured out what my thing was, I failed a lot. And that's the thing, like be prepared to have to pivot and change things and have beta clients and all of these things. And so as you continue to shift and change and evolve, it'll get clear, like you said, through action, it will get clear. Once you get clarity on what your thing is, then it's the time to say, okay, who can help me move this forward? What are whether it's technology, fonts, or logos, or whatever it is that you need. And so that brings us to my next question, which we mentioned earlier that you help women specifically to kind of move some of these side ventures forward. So tell us a little bit about what you do and how you do it.
My main focus is around setting goals, but not just setting goals for the purpose of having goals, but setting goals and converting those into strategic plans from a annual basis, quarterly basis, and then down to just a weekly basis. So really a focus on helping women take those ideas that they have, turn them into specific goals that they can put some measures on, and then create plans that are, so they're not just throwing spaghetti at the wall. They're doing things very intentionally and strategically to move their idea forward. And then I also do a lot of accountability coaching as well, because I think that that's one of the important things that we leave out. We try, even if we get help, even if we get a coach or someone to teach us how to do things, we leave out the accountability piece. And that is a piece that can make a huge difference. So I check in on people every week and make sure that they're staying on track with the plans that we created, and that they're doing those things. And then I have a group program where I provide community for those women. One thing that I have found is, I experienced it myself, and a lot of the women I work with have experienced that, if they want to join a group coaching program or a mastermind program or a membership, all those meetings are during the day while we're at work. All of those events are during the day. And so you can pay for one of those great programs, but you can't take advantage of most of it because it's during the day. And so they feel like, even if I go, I don't really fit in because I'm in a different world than people who are doing the entrepreneurial thing full time, right? Mm-hmm. So we have a group program where we really meet women together who are all in that situation where they feel like they don't fit in with other entrepreneurial groups because they are working full time, or they're homeschooling full time, or they're caregiving full time. Or they have two businesses, they have a real business and a fun business, lots of different reasons why they can't pursue this passion full time. And they want a community of people who can identify with that and can understand, and that they don't begin to compare themselves to people when they're able to spend 10 hours a week on their thing with someone else who's spending 40 hours a week on their thing. So yeah, those are the main things that I do, is a lot of strategic planning, coaching, accountability coaching, and then the community of people to walk through it together.
That is awesome. Okay, so now we're about to wrap up, but before we do that, if you knew that what you're about to share in the next 1 minute is going to be heard around the world, what would you want to share with people listening?
I would let them know that if God inspired something in them, He's going to provide all the resources you need to do it. Whether that's today or 10 years from now, we don't know. But don't give up on that dream that God has given you, because it's too important, because the world needs you, and because God needs you to go out and do that thing that He's called you to do. So don't give up on it, and just look for the ways that He's going to provide those resources in His time for you to do it.
Amen to that. I love that. That was powerful. That was powerful. Well, share with us, because I know there's, our friends are listening and they're thinking, okay, that's awesome, but how do I get in contact with Christa? So share with us where we can find you.
You can find me on Instagram at Do a New Thing. The name of my business is Do a New Thing. So everything, Instagram, website, Do a New Thing. I think we're going to have a special link in your show notes where people can come and they can I have a guide for, it doesn't have a very easy flowing name. It's like how to pursue your God dream while working full time. But it's a guide that goes through what I call the honor system, and how we can honor our employer, honor our boundaries, honor our community, and honor the people around us in pursuing our God dream while we're working full time. So I have a guide they can download for free. And then, just connect with me on social. I would love to hear from anyone. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and the struggles that you're having, and how we can, give you some resources to help you get through that.
Oh, I love that. And I know that you have a podcast as well. Is that
Yes.
also?
Yes, I do. I forgot. I always forget to mention the podcast. Yeah, it's called Just One Simple Thing: Goals, Plans, and Strategies for the Christian Creative. But where we talk about, they're very short episodes, about 8 to 12 minutes, where we just talk about one little struggle that online Christian ministry or business people face, and we give some very actionable tips to go away and do to make progress in that area.
I absolutely love that. Thank you so much for all that you've shared so much with us. We went in so many different topics. We talked about kind of what motivated you to start your own venture, what are some myths and barriers that keep us from starting ventures, how we might start one when keep our integrity and keep that transparency when it is necessary. We talked about resources and first steps to be successful, and we also shared some really powerful insights as far as like what you would want to be heard around the world.
Mm.
And so I just want to thank you for your time today. I had a lot of fun with you chatting, and I know everyone really enjoyed listening. So thank you again for spending time with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It really was a lot of fun, and I'm really glad that you and I have made this connection.
Yeah, me too. Me too. All right, everybody. Well, thank you again for joining us. Know that we love you. We're praying for you, and we'll see you on the next one.